Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for our final installment of Chapter 2. This is Part 4 of Basic Economic Concepts. I'm Miss Jennifer Blank, and here we go. All right, so what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about what a mixed economy is, why mixed economies are increasing. We're going to look at the circular flow for a mixed economy because it's a bit different than the one you learned about in previous lessons. We're going to look at a comparison of mixed economies, and we're going to take a special look at the good old US of A. All right, so without further ado, here we go. All right, so what is a mixed economy? It's a market-based economic system in which the government is involved to some extent. Now, depending on what extent the government is involved will depend on where it falls on the spectrum, all right? There are some concepts that are involved here in mixed economies. The idea of laissez-faire, that government should not intervene in the functioning of the marketplace, and this concept of private property. That's property owned by individuals or private business. Like I said, circular flow is different in mixed economies. So here's a continuum just to give you a sense of where people fall on the spectrum, right? So on the left-hand side, you've got centrally planned, right? Centrally planned over here. So North Korea, Cuba, we know they're doing so wonderfully economically. It's just fantastic world for them, right? And then over here, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we've got Hong Kong and Singapore. A lot of people like to say that U.S. is but it isn't. It's Singapore is actually the most free market in the world. And we, the United States, are floating right over here. So we're very much leaning towards free market. Canada's a little bit more to the left. Then if you look, Iran, China, and Russia are more to the left. So you can kind of get a sense of where the world's major economies are on this continuum. But these are all examples of slightly mixed economies. So just to give you an idea. All right, so here's the circular flow of mixed economy. All right, so I want you to pause this after I explain it and just kind of take a look at it, stare at it, internalize it. We're going to work with this a lot in class. So you still see firms, households, product markets, and factor markets, right? But what's different here is the monetary and physical flow change. And we've got a new component. We've got government right here in the middle, all right? So government spends money. It buys things from firms, and it employs members of households. So it goes to households to get labor and land and capital, and then it also buys some things from firms. So firms also buy things from the government, and they also pay taxes to the government. Households also pay taxes to the government, and there are some government-owned factors that come from this household market over here. So you see the flow is somewhat different. It's a little bit more complicated. All right, so government involvement in the factor market. You have government workers, and a higher percentage of employment is controlled by the government. It's not just private firms that are employing people. The government is doing it also. Government is also involved in the product market. They make purchases from private firms who are government contractors, and there are also services provided by government that aren't provided by anybody else. Roads, sewers, water, schools, things like that. There's also this transfer of money. Taxes are the government's income. Social services are government expenditure. Okay, that's what the government is paying out. Taxes are what they take in. All right, so comparison of mixed economies. So on the left, we have dominance of government intervention. So we have state-owned industries that produce most goods or services. There's a massive reduction or there's an outright banning of imports. No foreign companies in the market, and the market is largely controlled by government. A mixed economy where we have a dominance of free market principles, we have protection of private property by government, very little, if any, interference in the free market. They're favorable to foreign investment and involvement. There are little, if any, barriers to trade. And here's a key thing here, folks, independent banks. Independent banks are going to be really, really key as we continue to advance in our knowledge of economics. That's very, very important. All right, so the U.S. economy. We are a free enterprise system. That is an economic system characterized by private or corporate ownership of capital goods. Government does have a large role in the economy, however. We have social services. There's a certain amount of regulation. We have protection of private property. There is retaliation for trade violations. There are few barriers to trade, and we do have some protectionist policies for domestic industries. All right, so this is how the United States shakes out. We're going to explore this in more detail as we go forward. Why are free markets increasing? Well, they allow for greater efficiency. They allow for some regulation, and in theory, not too much. There is a certain amount, a limited amount of government involvement or regulation, but it does allow private individuals and corporations to control most of the factors of production. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. People are trying to take the good stuff from the centrally planned and the good stuff from the free market and trying to figure out how they can make those things work together and not work in conflict. So, economic system, just to wrap everything up and give you a real quick play-by-play of how these things work. So, traditional, 3 questions are answered by habit, custom, and ritual. In a free market, operation of market forces prevail, and you have the invisible hand. Centrally planned, you have government decision makers and a large bureaucracy. In the mixed, we have market forces with some government involvement. Feel free to pause that, write that down. That's important. Economic system quiz is formative. All right, so my guys, I mean, if you're not, not in my class, you're just watching the video, that's cool, but I recommend you take this quiz anyway. So my folks, Kate, take this quiz. Take this quiz, and then I want you to email the answers to me, all right? Bring it in to me, all right? So go take this quiz. It's formative, so don't panic, but it should give you an idea of how well-versed you are and how much you understand economic systems. This is the end of Chapter 2, folks. I will see you in Chapter 3.